So what's going on with the dumping? Is Grayscale, have they stopped? Well, the answer is no. So looking at yesterday, day 9, the good thing is the dumping is slowing down. But there is still a lot of dumping. Grayscale dumped about 429 million yesterday. And unfortunately, even with additions into the other ETFs, it wasn't enough to overcome the 429 million. So we had a net loss of 158 million coming out of the market rather than going into the market. But you could see that it has slowed down. The day before, it was like 600 something. So hopefully, we're going to find that equilibrium soon, right? Last night I talked about a lot of theories about whether or not it was FTX that sold the most or DCG, the parent company of Grayscale, if they sold the most. We don't know. But right now, after day 9, after a little bit more than a week, Grayscale has dumped 4.4 billion with a B out of their fund. So that brings them down to about 20.2 billion, 20.3 billion. Overall net flows after 9 days is still positive, 824 million. So that's good. More went in than out. But yesterday, for the last 2 days, yesterday and the day before, we had more outflows than inflows. Here's the thing. Eventually, it's going to stop. Grayscale is not like the Federal Reserve, okay? They can't just print more money. They can't even print more shares if they wanted to without adding more Bitcoin. So at some point, this is going to stop. There's going to be an equilibrium where they don't sell more than they take in. And then that's when that selling, pressure just dissipates, and that's when Bitcoin can come back up again. But right now, all eyes are on Grayscale. There's just a lot coming out. But here's the thing. Yesterday was interesting because Blackrock didn't add as much Bitcoin as Fidelity. Fidelity added double Blackrock yesterday. So they're close. BlackRock holds 1.8 billion and Fidelity holds 1.6 billion. And plus the others are still gaining. ARK is over $500 million in their fund. Bitwise is at basically $500 million. And others are picking up. Overall, these big institutions, they're still loading up on Bitcoin. I've been saying this for a while, ever since, I've been saying it for years, but ever since the introduction of ETFs, it has accelerated. These guys will continue to load up. They don't care about volatility. In fact, they embrace it. They rather see the market go down so they can accumulate more cheaply. That's the right mentality. Unlike most retail investors, they do the opposite, right? But there are a lot of accumulation right now. Now, something that's really interesting out of Bitwise is this. They've gone ahead and announced their wallet address. So, most of these big boys, they don't tell you anything. They hide everything. They don't want you to know. But Bitwise, they were the ones that first came out and said that they were going to donate a portion of their profits to the Bitcoin developers, to the community. I think they said 5% or something, which is fantastic. And now they just gone ahead and released their wallet address so everyone can track it and knows exactly how much is in it. Right? And right now it's $465 million worth. It's about 11,858. There's no guessing. You don't need Arkham to go in and try to find all the wallets or anything like that. They're just letting you know. That's fantastic. If all the fund companies does this, it would be absolutely fantastic. But I have a feeling that BlackRock is not going to be sharing their address. But eventually Arkham could find it anyways, right? But I'm more interested in the wallets. They're not holding the funds, BTC, but like their own individual private stash of BTC, because I feel like a lot of these institutions have separate wallets with a lot more, billions upon billions upon billions of Bitcoin in there. We just don't know, not yet. I think eventually it'll come out. Outside the institutions, whales are still loading up. If you look at entities with over 1,000 Bitcoin in their wallet, it's going up. It's going up by the hundreds. So ever since like a few weeks ago. So the whales out there are definitely loading up. There are a lot of examples. You could look into whale alerts or whatever. You see a lot of transactions like 10 million, 50 million, 100 million going into Binance or Coinbase or whatever, right, of USDT. What are they doing? They're buying Bitcoin and crypto with it, and they're loading up right now because they're not discouraged. I'm not discouraged. Hopefully none of you guys are discouraged about the recent price dump because we know there's so much goodness coming. We're moving exactly like how we should, despite some of the FUD that has come out and become rampant in the space, right? So the whales are still loading up as well. Retail, I know I don't have any figures right now, but retail, most retail investors that have been in it for at least a few years, also not discouraged. The number of holders, basically all-time high. Number of Bitcoin being held for 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, all-time high. So that's the good thing. But I'm fearful of the new retail investors that have FOMO'd in recently. Now they're becoming discouraged and they're leaving, and they really shouldn't be. So here's one example of Bitcoin moving on track. And this is actually really uncanny, but if you look at it, 80 days till the halving event. Back in 2016, Bitcoin was still 62% down from its high. In 2020, 80 days from the halving event, Bitcoin was 52% down from its previous high. And right now, we're 80 days away from the halving event, and we're 42% down from our previous high. So do you see the pattern there? Every single cycle, right? We've been recovering faster, or you could argue we haven't dumped as much as before, right? But again, we're moving according to plan. We're moving exactly the same way as before. 80 days prior to the halving event, we're much closer to the previous high than the bottom, right? We've been recovering. It has always happened. And then what always happens after a halving event? You know, that parabolic rise up. And that is coming up too. That's not going to change. It's just a question of if it happens right away or we have to wait a few months. That's the thing. In 2020, we had to wait about 4 months after a halving event before Bitcoin really took off. So this time around, but in 2017, that's not the case. In 2017, things just kind of took off immediately, or 2016, I should say. So we'll have to see after this time, after April, are we going to have to wait until August or September to see that parabolic rise? Or do we just see it starting in, May, June, July? We could, because it correlates with the timing of the Fed rate cuts, but we'll see. Anyways, my point is this. Yeah, Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin doesn't care about macro conditions, or it doesn't care about FUD. It doesn't care about whale manipulation. Bitcoin is just pure. It's code. And it's beautifully designed so that it accommodates everything. And it's just going to keep on moving forward, and that's not going to change. And how far forward is it going to go? Well, you guys know that every 4-year cycle, well, some of you guys know, every 4-year cycle, basically, you have one nasty year. That's the year where Bitcoin comes down from its top, it forms a bottom, and then it goes into recovery mode for about 3 years. Now, what's interesting is one of those 3 years is basically getting to where we are now, right? From the bottom, and now we're getting close to the halving event. And then for the next 2 years on, basically, or 1.5 years, is the parabolic rise. Again, we're moving exactly the same way as before. So nothing has changed. In fact, you could argue that maybe we have moved a little bit faster than before. Okay, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the halving event. I'm waiting for what comes later this year, and especially in 2025. That's when things will get very, very, very interesting.